This is a significant emotional and physical and financial investment. Really, it's the longest business transaction that you and I will ever engage in, right? It's not just a purchase or transaction, it's a 1 year, at least a year relationship, right?
Understand this, that yes, it is a business, but again, there's a quality of experience that you're going to have knowing that you're just not in it for the money too. The reality is not everyone can afford the high rents or the high mortgages that are out there to be had. So what do we do for them?
As I said, landlords should take the attitude of loving your tenants as opposed to they're the enemy, they're the adversary. If they're an adversary, maybe you're doing things wrong. More likely, maybe you're selecting the wrong tenants, because it should be a positive relationship. If both parties are benefiting from the relationship, it carries on and they stay in there. In this case, they stay in the unit and the landlord gets his money.
The thing is that you're allowing someone to live in your property. They have an incredible amount of rights under the provincial government. You have fairly limited rights in terms of they have a lot of entitlement because it is their home. Correct. And you're allowing them to be there for an extended period of time using your stuff. Mm-hmm. And if you're worried about that at all, right, it's not the place for you. Right. My name is John Willits. I've been a landlord for 6 years. We own a variety of different properties, from an 8-plex apartment to individual homes.
So I'm Gary Harvey, and this is my wife Cindy, and we are living here in Port Elgin, have been here for 20 plus years, and I'm pastor at the Port Elgin Missionary Church, and my wife Cindy is the office administrator.
My name is Russ Coltrip, and I am a sales representative with Remax Land Exchange in Kincardine. So we have landlords, absentee landlords from all over Toronto, as far away as Calgary, I guess is the furthest one. Some of them have never seen the units, never met the tenants, but as long as they're confident, that their interests are looked after, that's the service we provided for them. So by 2010, that had increased to about 140 units we were looking after.
So we had lived in the town for 17 years. We had always wanted a place with more property. So a piece of property came up for sale just like 5 minutes outside of town, so it's perfect in that regard. And from an affordability point of view, it was beyond our means, except that it had 2 rental units attached to it. So when you're wanting to become a landlord, you really need to think it through up front. What kind of a business model are you working with? Are you looking at your facility and just seeing it as something that you can ride to make money? If you are, then you better make sure up front that your building is set. People have to live there. So, care for the maintenance of your building. If you see already that your building, that the apartments, units that you're going to be renting out have a lot of maintenance issues, why would you put that on somebody?
Well, we use a formal 1-page application form, right, that asks a lot of details. I mean, everybody, as I said, everybody deserves a decent place to live, and all you have to do is be transparent on these application forms. It's important to find a good fit for both people. It's important that the tenant find a place that they're comfortable, safe, and that they can afford. And it's good for the landlord that he has a tenant that is happy, that calls the place home for long term, and that he doesn't have to worry about collecting the rent.
One thing that's worked really well for us that I learned many years ago from another seminar, ask for the previous landlord's name. On the theory being that the current landlord is going to lie to you. And I found that to be absolutely true in some cases, unfortunately. If they're a nightmare tenant, the landlord's going to tell you, oh, they're wonderful. They pay the rent on time and they always look after the unit. And you think, great, you rent the unit to this person and you inherit their problem. By reverse, and maybe less common, if the tenant's a great tenant, they don't want to lose them. So if you contact the previous landlord, he's got no hidden agenda. He'll be very candid with you. And the times I've forgotten and not checked with the previous landlord, sometimes it's ended in disaster.
If what you're looking for to decide whether it's a prospective tenant or not is character, then character is not comprised of income. Income does not define character. I choose to believe that everybody coming in wants to make a good impression. The issue is whether they can follow through. Help them follow through.
There's going over the lease itself, making sure the lease is set up, saying, you know what, the fridge and stove are included. But if you put an air conditioner in, it's $35 a month through the summer. And that making it clear up front, this is what the relationship is. Right? You're allowed one car in the parking lot. Putting those details in, a lot of people don't, especially if they're kind of just, they bought a house on spec and they just want to rent it out, you know, until they're ready to sell it or upgrade it or stuff. That's part of the professionalism of being put in. So then there's when the inspection sheet when they move in. So if you were a new tenant and you've been successful and we're happy to welcome you to your new home, so just so that we're sure that everything is clear and you understand, we have an inspection worksheet that we go through. So we'll go and we'll check, you know, the taps, are they fine? Is the sink okay? Is the fridge clean? Is it working properly? Is the stove good? Are the windows all right? How is the carpeting? Is it to your specification? Is there anything I as a landlord need to do that I've missed that I can fix up and address right away so that you're happy, healthy, and comfortable? You know, is the bathroom in good shape? Is the walls in good shape? Is everything painted properly? Does the door locks work? Right? And we're doing that together as tenant and landlord. And then we go through the checklist and, new smoke detector, new battery in the smoke detector. Is it operational? Is the heating working properly? Getting that all out of the way up front says, this is the agreement that we're going into. This is the state of the unit. We're both clear on this, right? And that again, establishes a strong working relationship.
I understand legalese and so on and landlord and tenant laws, but a lot of tenants don't, and they can't process the information that you're handing them. The other thing I do is make sure they read the lease, and they'll often come in and they're excited, you know, to get the rental unit, and I'll tell them, no, like, you know, please have a seat, and I want you to read it. I'm right here, you know, I might be doing something else. Just yell out if you have a question. What does this line mean? What does this sentence mean? I want you to understand it.
Ask the right questions. We have a lot of guidelines for our stuff, and some of them, the best tenants are ones that said, now what do you mean by this? Rather than you hand it to them and they go, yeah, when can we move in?
Yeah, and I think we use the expression wearing a different hat. Sometimes you've just got to remind yourself, I am a landlord. And in those moments, remember the boundaries that you've put in place, remember the agreements that you've had them sign, and all of the obligations on your part and the obligations on their part.
One of the things that we've been successful at is we try and express to the tenants and set it up within our community. And ours is modest income housing. It's $700 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. It's for people on long-term disability, pensioners, things like that. Everyone deserves a decent place to live, but what we've done is we've been able to establish it as a community. We send out a regular or a quarterly or a seasonal, a little bit of a newsletter, right? Thanking them for taking care of the place, making sure that they are conscious that they do have neighbors and that they do have to keep the place, you know, they have to keep the place clean so it's good for everybody, right? That they should mind the electricity because it's one of the main costs of operation. And if we have to raise the costs, it's going to come back to them, right? And the better they behave together, the better they cooperate and consider each other, the better the quality of life that they'll have.
Some tenants are of the mistaken opinion that landlords don't like to be bothered, but the landlord has an instinctive, obviously a benefit to protect his unit, to protect his investment. And we've had tenants, bless their hearts, you know, that think, well, I didn't want to call you because it's, I didn't want to bother you with this. So, you know, we've learned that they've shut off one of the bathrooms and they're not using it and so on. Because the toilet was leaking or there was a drip underneath the sink. And from a drip underneath the sink, which is relatively easy to fix, now we're looking at replacing the vanity and the flooring and all those kind of things because they didn't want to bother me. I said, please bother me. And then we can send somebody right away. Now, if we don't, then it's on me. And the other thing it demonstrates to the tenant too is that you actually care about their comfort and their occupancy in the unit, that you want them to be comfortable and happy there.
The Landlord-Tenant Act has very specific rules. And there's significant variations on those rules compared to general contract law. There's things you can negotiate, there's things you cannot negotiate. And that's the situation we're in. We have to go by those rules. And those are rules above and beyond what you and I would go through as if we had a mechanic shop or if we were selling a car. They're far more complicated than that.
There's a website and a service based in Toronto called the Landlord Self-Help Center. And again, if you just Google that, you can get right to them. It's a little bit different because, number one, it's not a government agency. The Landlord and Tenant Board can basically only tell you the law, rights and obligations. They can't give you advice or strategy. If you're a landlord and you have a problem tenant or a nightmare tenant and you just don't know what to do, you haven't had that experience, you don't want that experience, these people are quite remarkable. They're usually staffed by paralegals or lawyers, junior lawyers that are articling. It's a volunteer service. And you can literally phone them and say, this is what the tenant's doing to me. What can I do? And they will tell you in plain English what you can and can't do and give you advice and say, do this first. If that doesn't work, try this. I think it's important for the landlords to be familiar with support programs for the tenants. And there's a number of them that we've used. The rent supplement, whereby the county, through the province, provides a lump sum to the tenant based on their income and the rent they're paying and their utilities and so on. So sometimes $200-300 a month. There's a rent geared to income program where the tenant applies. They state, their total income from all sources, and they pay 25% of that. I was saying 30% before, but slightly lower threshold. They'll only pay 25% of their gross income. The housing authority will kick in the balance to make it up.
Well, there's Grey Bruce Housing, which is for people with low income or need financial assistance. It's an excellent tool. It allows for a landlord to get a predictable portion of their rent money deposited electronically directly to your account, so it doesn't actually go through the prison. Helps them out immensely. It gives the landlord peace of mind. Any of the paralegals in the area are very, very good. Other professionals that I do rely on that probably wouldn't come top of mind is the local fire department, the fire prevention officer. Having him physically go through the building and do a third-party objective check. Is this building safe? Is that smoke detector out of warranty? And they will pick up on things that you or sometimes even your insurance adjuster would not know. And the thing is that for my wife and I, we want to make sure the place is a safe and clean home, but no one's ever going to get hurt.
We're all human. That's what respecting each other as humans is. It's not about territorial. It's not about hiding things or getting out of things, or it's not about lording over somebody. I mean, no landlord wants to be a slumlord. So you've got to figure out what would it feel like if you were if you're a landlord. What would it feel like to live as a tenant in that condition? Right. And for a tenant to think, what would it feel like if I was a landlord and every week I was being told that something was broken and it was because I was doing it?
Well, a lot of landlords do. Like, I won't rent to people on welfare, and I've heard that, and I think that's idiotic. Like, there are responsible people on welfare. I know a lot of them personally who have just fallen on hard times for whatever reason, injury, death of a partner or whatever. And not to suggest for a minute, we often talk about the 80-20 rule, where 20% of the tenants cause 80% of the grief and 80% of the tenants are, wonderful. And that's typical across all income levels. If the suggestions that we've talked about, the rules and so on, are followed, it's a respectful relationship and so on, there's no different. It's just a different price point because, let's face it, if your unit was acceptable to people making $100,000 a year, yeah, you wouldn't need, to rent to people of lesser means. But if your unit is not up to those standards and what those people would expect that are making, those kind of incomes, then you've got to be a little bit more understanding. If you handle it like a business, if you follow the rules of, as we discussed, screening the tenants, being firm but fair with the tenants, and looking after their needs, hopefully they'll reciprocate.
With one of our properties, it's a small home. When we first purchased it, we thought, oh well, this would be a great summer rental, week by week, and we could rent it out for the week what we would probably charge for a month. And we did that, and we put it on Kijiji, and we went on a couple of other websites and things like that. And you end up having to screen people to go through. You're allowing strangers into a significant financial asset that you have. And we found that some people were wonderful and left the place in great shape, and other times when they left, you would have days of work cleaning up after. And based on my wife and my lifestyle and our expectations, we thought, well, maybe we should go to a long-term lease. Get someone who looks at it as their home and not just a hotel room, and will take care of the place and be good neighbors. And we decided to go that way, and we're very happy we did. Quality of the tenants has gone up in terms of the wear and tear in the building has gone down. And the income really ends up being about the same, and it's a lot less time on our part. And time is money. And if you're going to spend days and days screening people and still possibly make mistakes, then I've got other better things to do.
And I think one of the biggest things is we often talk about trust being earned, but I think on the front end, trust has to be extended, and take the opportunities to extend yourself in that way. That alone will foster an amazing relationship.
It's not as easy as you see it on TV. It's not one of those situations where you go and you renovate your basement or you renovate a house and they say, oh, we've had a real estate agent in and you're going to be able to get $2,000 a month for this place. And that's the end of it. And people are delighted, and it's almost like they're going to have a line up at their door and they're going to experience that. That's not the case. I don't know why they even call it reality TV.
If you want the best tenants ever, then you've got to foster that. You've got to create the conditions so that they can be those tenants.